Hello, my name is Jullian Walklate, facing adversity. I'm going to talk with you today about my book, Radical Home Education. I don't want to go to school anymore, said Simon. Go to school, I can't cope with this, I replied. I had spent the last 12 months going backward and forward proactively to the school because the school system was failing Simon and we were having issues. I think back to when he was a little person, a baby, a toddler. He was such a happy child, a contented child. He would come down to the stables with me and wander around the horses and climb up the hay bales. He had the freedom to do whatever he wanted. He would happily go and stay with other people, his grandparents, friends of ours. He was such a outgoing, contented child. So when he was 6 and we were in Florida on holiday with some friends, and he was clinging to my leg and refusing to leave me, our friend Kathy said to me, "What's going on here? This isn't Simon. This isn't the Simon that we know." And I looked at him and I thought, you're right. When you see somebody every day, you don't see the little changes. But when somebody hasn't seen him for a while, then they see the change. And the only difference now was that he was attending school full time. When he was 7, the class teacher suggested that we actually had him assessed by a special educational needs coordinator. So after the assessment, I was chatting with this Senko, and her opinion was that it wasn't that Simon couldn't do it, is that he couldn't see the point. So when he went up into the next class and he was again being left behind and he wasn't learning to read and write as quickly as they thought he should. And so he got to the stage where he didn't understand what he was meant to be doing. He was too scared to go and ask the class teacher, and so she would then shout at him because she thought he was being lazy. This then put victim on his forehead, and he became the scapegoat of the class, and the rest of the children thought they could pick on him. So the next day, "Mummy, I really don't want to go to school anymore." And I agreed. This was the consequence of having met somebody whose child was home educated, or homeschooled actually, because Cassie went to somebody else's house and they did school at home. So that's true homeschooling. There was also a programme on Channel 4 at the time about home education and homeschooling, and Cassie was actually on this programme, and I let Simon watch it, at which point he realised that he did have a choice. He didn't have to go to school. And so I agreed that we would leave it for 2 weeks, 2 weeks' time, Easter holidays. We were going away to France for Easter, and we would then make the decision after that. So when the headmistress phoned me that week and said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm going to home educate." And she said, "Well, I'm going to have to talk to the educational welfare officer." And I said, "You will need to speak to Mr. Rigby." Because the previous year, the May time of the previous year, Simon had refused to go to school for 10 days. And somebody said to me, "You need to contact the educational welfare officer before they come knocking on your door," which was very good advice. And so I had already met Mr. Rigby, even though Simon had agreed to go back to school, relented to go back to school at that, resigned I think is the word, to go back to school at that stage. So, as I said to the headmistress, you need to talk to Mr. Rigby. Mr. Rigby then came out and visited us after the Easter holidays. He was so helpful, so supportive and so understanding. He was brilliant. And he actually had the contact details of somebody else who home educated locally. So I got in touch with Heather and we went to visit her, and she organised a weekly meeting at Bowood House, which is open to the public. It's got beautiful grounds, play areas for the children, and a house to look around. Because at that stage I was thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? So we turned up on the Wednesday afternoon at Bowood, and we looked around, we looked for this other family, we looked for other home educating families, and we couldn't find the group. So we went back to the cafe and we had a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. And in the cafe was two women with a school-aged child. So I approached them and said, are you part of the home ed group that meets here? And she said, no, we're not. We do home educate, but we're from away. What a lovely place to have a home ed group meeting. I went back and sat down with Simon, and I felt miserable. I felt like I could cry. I felt like I'd failed. I couldn't find this group. We'd just taken this leap off the cliff and we're going, where's the parachute? We did eventually find Heather that day, and she and her children had been looking around the house. And so we then started meeting regularly at Bowood. And then I met other home educating families who introduced me to other groups that were meeting. There was a monthly meeting in Devizes. There was a weekly meeting that started up in Swindon. And then we started going to the Oasis every week, and the local swimming pool, and the local ice rink. So life became a whole whirlwind, and it snowballed. When we first stopped going to school, Simon was a bit reticent about going out, because you'd get the normal, oh, playing truant then, aren't you supposed to be at school? And Simon would say, oh, I don't go to school. And I could feel him drawing into himself. And so after a couple of weeks of this, I said to Simon, no, we've got to change this. We've got to change this. We've got to make this positive. Yes, you don't go to school, but actually we have chosen to home educate. So then Simon would say, no, I'm home educated, with quite a proud voice. And that then helped him carry his way through. Again, what would I do? How would I do home education? I went to school. My only understanding of education and learning was a piece of paper and a pencil. And if I sat Simon down at a desk with a piece of paper and a pencil, he might as well be at school, because that was his stress. That was his stressor. And actually, it probably took him 2 years to de-school, to maybe pick up a pencil. Suggesting that he did anything that was at all school-like, you could see the shutters go up. I can't do that. I can't do that. He was too scared to try in case he got it wrong. Shortly after we came out of school, we went to visit one of his school friends, or children that he'd met at school. And on the way home, Simon was relating a story to me, the conversation that he'd had with Catherine. Catherine had said to him, what do you do for English lessons? And Simon had said, well, nothing. And I looked at him. Well, I didn't, because I was driving. I said, what language do you speak? And he went, oh, English. You are doing English every day. And we would discuss things as we were driving along, going to group meetings. Different words that sound the same and mean different and are spelt different, like right and right. And so we did it in a different way. But because when he used to come home from school and I'd say to him, what did you do at school? And he'd go, work, 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 in that Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh depressed voice. So when home education wasn't hurting, he didn't think he was learning anything. So I put a big flip chart in his bedroom with a big circle on it and split it into 8 sections. And in those 8 sections, I put each of Gardner's 8 intelligences: linguistic, mathematical, logical, spatial, music, nature, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and kinesthetic. And each day, toward the end of the day, we would go out to this flip chart and I'd say to him, okay, what did you do today that was linguistic? And we go, we played a box game, Scrabble or Upwards, or there was one that I picked up from a charity shop. I trawled the charity shops for appropriate box games. There was one called Cats, Dogs and Hogs, which was quite a fun word game. And I let him use the dictionary to find his word. The game says not to, but it encouraged him to understand alphabetical order and trying to find a really difficult word for me to try and guess. What did you do for mathematical logical? Oh, when we were loading the hay for the horses and we were putting the hay bales out in the feeders, we were working out how many hay bales were needed in each feeder and how many bales, if the horses ate 3 bales a day, how many days would these bales last and when would we need to buy some more? What did we do for spatial? Well, we might have drawn a picture or something. What did we do for musical? Maybe listen to some music. What did we do for kinesthetic? Well, we went for a walk around the field. What did we do for interpersonal relations? Well, he went and played with Charlie James next door and had a conversation with him. What did he do for intrapersonal? He made a Lego model on his own. And what did he do for nature? Well, that was easy because we were out in the field every day. We were out with the horses every day. It didn't take long for him to realise that actually he was accessing all of his multiple intelligences and it didn't hurt. One day, one of the other families, Sheena bought her son a Mindstorm kit, Lego, and she'd looked it up online and come across this first Lego League international competition. It's an international, worldwide competition. And there was actually a regional competition happening in Swindon, where we lived. And we went along to watch this. The children came along and we all watched this competition. And afterward, the children were there. We could do better than that. So the following year, Sheena registered us for this competition. We had 11 children between the age of 8, 9, up to about 14 or 15. Girls and boys, one German exchange girl, one French exchange boy. And we duly received the challenge map. Each year was a different challenge, and that year it was Space Odyssey. No, it wasn't. It was Ocean Odyssey. And so every team around the world receives the same challenge map, the same Lego pieces, and the same research topic project that needs to be done. And so you then start designing a robot, working out how to do the challenges on the challenge mat. And this played to each of their strengths. Simon enjoyed robot design. Others enjoyed doing the computer programming for the robot. Others were doing the research for the research project that they had to present. And so when we went to the regional competition in Swindon, we absolutely wiped the floor of the 11 schools that were in the competition. This qualified them to go to Loughborough, the national competition, where they came 5th with their robot design. And this qualified them to go to the Open European Championships in Eindhoven, where they came 27th out of 52 teams worldwide. It was brilliant going to an international competition because we saw so much more. We learnt stuff about what other teams were doing, especially the American teams. They had so much more insight into what could be done on the challenge mat and those sort of things. So that was amazing. So then the following year we walked it at Swindon. That was the year that there was the volcano in Iceland, so we couldn't actually go to the international competition that year. The third year that we did it, they qualified again for the Open Asian Championships, and our team went to Tokyo, to Japan. And what struck me is Simon was happy to go up there without me, because for at least the first 2 years of being home educated, he wouldn't let me leave him. If we went to the local sports centre for him to do his trampolining, I had to stay there. I couldn't go and sit out somewhere else and read a book or whatever. I had to stay next to that trampoline. So for him to actually go and trust these families, these other home educating families that were part of our family, extended family, for him to leave me and trust them to go to Japan was amazing for me. So when Simon got to 16 and he decided to go to college, I suggested that he actually was registered with their special needs learning support team. So when he went to college, I'll just take you back a little bit. When Simon first came out of school, his father said to me, "I'm really, really worried that if Simon does not go to school, he will not get any qualifications." And I said, actually, I think that if Simon does go to school, he won't get any qualifications. Because at that stage, I became aware of 80% of children that truant are boys. By the time they're about 14 years old, they're disaffected with what's going on in school. The increase, and still now, the increase in suicides in teenage boys up to 30 years old, the stress and the depression that's going on. I could see, when Simon was 9 years old, I could see the writing on the wall, and I didn't want him to be one of those statistics. So at 16, he said he would like to go to the local college. That first day, he stood at the bus stop and he got that tummy ache that he hadn't actually had for 7 years when he was stood waiting for the bus to go to school. He got to college. He went into the first lesson, which was GCSE English. And the class tutor, the teacher, was saying what Shakespearean book that they had to read, at which Simon freaked. When he got home, he was a quivering wreck. And I went, okay, this isn't working. So I phoned up Leslie, the learning support. She was brilliant. She said, clearly this is not the right class for him. And so the next day when he went into college, he went to Leslie and she went, right, you're not going into that class. We'll put you into Skills for Life for Maths and English, and we can get you tested for dyslexia, which duly happened. And as a consequence of that, he then had extra time. He had learning support in the classroom. He had extra time for his exams. And in 3 years at college, he did A-level fashion design and textiles. He did GCSE photography. He did iMedia. He did BTEC in software development and web design. He did a business studies course in 3 years at college. And also he did up to level 2 Maths and English Skills for Life. So now he's in his 20s, late 20s. He's successfully running his own gardening business. And when we first came out of school, people said to me, what's your aim for Simon? And I said, my aim is to produce a happy, well-rounded, sociable adult. And at 9 years old, you hold your breath because you just hope that we will get there. We will get there. And we did. Simon runs a board gaming group, or he did. Sadly, we can't do it at the moment in the local village. He is a volunteer driver for a local Good Neighbour scheme. He's part of our neighbourhood planning committee. He is sociable and functional. What annoys me and what annoyed me a few years, 2-3 years ago, again, a Channel 4 programme about looking at the lost children, the missing children. And it was saying about how children that didn't go to school were missing out on society, missing out on life. And Simon and I sit on the settee grinding our teeth because we know it's not true. And so I wrote my book. I wrote my book about why we home educated, and I included 4 other families that we are still friends with now. We started home educating 18 years ago, and we still have contact with these other families and these other children who are now also grown up and adult. I don't know what the time is. I hope I'm carrying on. And so my book, Radical Home Education, is about the different ways. We all did it differently. And they are all successful adults now. One child, he's now doing his PhD. He did Open University. He got his first class honours degree through Open University by the time he was 20. He has no GCSEs, but he's now doing a doctorate. You don't need GCSEs. You don't need to learn between the age of 5 and 16. And in fact, Simon actually learnt more between 16 and 19, or did his qualifications in 3 years. And so, there we go. I'm Susan Walklate, and I've written a book called Radical Home Education, because that's what we did.